Hi, you guys. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Allie Wilkins. If it's your first time here, I am an oracle, I'm an author, I'm a spiritual guide, and mostly I just love studying ancient wisdom and then sharing with you what I find, blending together a lot of different ancient cultures. And so that's a lot of the work I do in my ancient feminine temple, working with goddess wisdom. But ultimately, I just really want to support the collective awakening, starting with how I embody that myself and then sharing it with other people, what I found helpful. So that's what my YouTube channel is about. If you want to subscribe, you can do that. I am super excited to talk about our topic today because it's something that I reference so often in other videos. And it's just something that has really opened my eyes to the journey of consciousness that we haven't been taught, I'm here in the US and our school system, the history lessons that we learn are so inaccurate, right? And everyone has probably heard this, that, history, it depends who's telling the story. It's going to change based on who's telling it, which side is telling it. So we can't really ever trust what we're hearing about historically. And this topic just really showcases how much broader life is than we've been taught. So we're going to go into that concept, and I'm going to be going back and forth sharing my screen with you. I'm like not super tech savvy in terms of I don't know how to like put the picture on the screen with me. So I'm going to go back and forth so you can see the imagery, because otherwise you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, let's just go into it. Okay. So we're going to start just with the conceptual conversation around this. Okay. So your sun sign, right? There's 12 signs in the zodiac, and this doesn't just apply to when you were born. It also applies to ages of time. Okay. So I'm going to switch my camera now to show you this. Okay, so this is an image from a PowerPoint that I did on a masterclass called Divinely Funded. So I'm just reusing this here, but this is going to show you the map that we're looking at as we talk about this, okay? So you can see that we're working with a wheel. This is like the wheel of time. And so we understand in our collective consciousness today that we each are born under a specific sun sign, right? So I'm a Sagittarius. If you want to learn more about Western astrology and sidereal astrology, which is where the stars actually are, I'll put a video up here that you can right click on that and watch that after this. You may have a different sun sign under Western astrology than you do Vedic. Mine is Sagittarius in both. So we all know we have one of these sun signs, right? But these signs also apply to a much larger scope when we are looking at time itself. Okay. So each of these ages is around 2000 years, give or take a few decades. So right now we are right on the cusp of the age of Pisces and Aquarius. So before we go into that, I'm going to point up here at the age of Leo. This was the last golden age. And this would have been about 10,000 to 8,000 BC. So this would be like 12,000 years ago. This was the last golden age. And each of these different ages also have their own avatar. So they have sort of an embodiment of Christ consciousness. So we would know this in the age of Pisces here as being Yeshua, Jesus was the avatar of that age. So up here, this is the golden age. Okay. The avatar during this time period was Rama. You may have heard of like Rama and Sita. That's his counterpart. So Cancer is when we start talking about, this is when the Bible starts talking about the Great Flood. This is what many of us have heard this story. So the age of Cancer is when the Great Flood happened. The avatar of this time period would have been Noah. And this would have happened about 8,000 to 6,000 BC. So each of these are about 2,000 years, like I said. This would also be around the time that Atlantis and Lemuria fell. And there wouldn't have really been religion. There would have just been a deep connection to the divine, but there was no like formulated religions at this time. There was just a connection to source and a deep connection with nature. So then we're moving into the age of Gemini, and this would have been about 6,000 to 4,000 BC. And so we know we do have history of some things happening during this time period. We'll get into that in a second, but this is when civilization would have kind of started to return. So during the age of Cancer, the Great Flood, probably a good amount of time, things would have been wiped out. So civilization started to return with the age of Gemini. Trade and communication started again. This is also when it said that writing was developed during this time period. And the avatar of this, I actually don't know the person who would have been the avatar during this time period, but it said that the Tower of Babel, that biblical story, that would be the avatar, if you will, in that age. The age of Taurus, this is the age of Hathor. Hathor is an Egyptian goddess who ruled during this time. And I think also further back than this, but this is considered the age of Hathor. This would have been from 4,000 to 2,000 BC. This is also the beginning of the Kali Yuga. So the Kali Yuga is basically it's a time of darkness. So the Kali Yuga is said to span from the age of Taurus all the way up about halfway into the age of Aquarius. And so during this time, consciousness is falling. Consciousness is falling. So when I said in the beginning of this that this has taught me how consciousness works. In the age of Leo, everyone has high consciousness, right? We know about the stories of Lemuria. I'll put a video up here if you haven't heard about Lemuria. I have a few different videos around that. Very, very high consciousness. There wouldn't have been war, disease, famine, that sort of thing, that we're facing right now. Consciousness begins to fall after the flood, moving us. So now we're just talking about the age of Taurus. Where is my arrow? Where did it go? Hold on. Okay, here's my arrow. So yeah, then the age of Taurus this is when they say that the Egyptian pyramids were built. I think that happened much earlier. But what's important to know about this time period is that this is when the Kali Yuga began. The avatar during this time would have been Krishna. And so here's where things get interesting, okay? The Bible sort of tells us about teeny little incidences from these time periods, but it acts as if these time periods were archaic, like they had, they were primitive cavemen. We have that picture. I think that is so inaccurate. And a lot of what we hear about starts in the age of Aries from the Bible. So this would have been 2000 to 2000 BC to about 100 AD. This would be in the very beginning, the time of Moses. This would be the time that, the Jewish people fled from Egypt. This is the time period that would have been happening, and it's the age of war and conquest. So the Kali Yuga starts here, and then it gets darker and darker and darker. The energy around war starts to come in, even with the conversation around slavery. Like that would not have been happening in the age of Leo based on the consciousness. You would never think you could own another human. So this age of darkness really starts to show itself during the age of Aries. And we see that through the empire starting to be built. Okay. This is also when, like, towards the end of the age of Aries, like the Roman Empire would have been coming into great power, right around the end of the age of Aries and into the age of Pisces. Now, Pisces, the very beginning of this age, is when Jesus and Mary Magdalene were existing. So they were around during the shift of this time period. Just like we're at the shift right now between Pisces and Aquarius, they were at the shift here. And so the age of Pisces is about 180 to around 2000 AD. And this time period is a little bit a lot of people who study this sort of thing, some people think that we're already into the age of Aquarius. Some people think we have another 100 years before it actually starts, because we're starting to wake up. I would like to think that we're right on the cusp here, but you can kind of choose your own opinion around that. But what's important for us to know about the age of Pisces is that this is the space. So the Kali Yuga began here. We started moving down, getting darker, 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 darker. War, conquest, power, greed really come into play. The age of Pisces, this time period right here is when all the goddess temples would have been shut down really a little bit before. And monotheism starts to come into play. So the idea that you can only worship one God, the idea that you have to worship my God, right? This is when the church, a few hundred years into this, is really when the church started to create a lot of power, and they were ruling from a space of greed and power. And you don't have to believe that, but you could go watch I have a masterclass called Return to Goddess that really goes into that on a deep level. We're not going to go into that today because it's a whole different energy. But I'll put a link for that in the comments if you want to explore it. It's free. You absolutely should if you want to learn more about this. So this is the time when basically we completely renunciate all pleasure. We are told we are sinners if we enjoy pleasure. We're told that we're sinners regardless of what happens, basically, for being born. And there's the energy of complete disempowerment. And like I said, the avatar during this time would have been Jesus. And these are known as the Dark Ages. And we think in terms of time, the Dark Ages would have been like medieval times, like 500 to or 600 to like 900 AD. But this entire 2000-year period is the Dark Age. So now we're right here. So you can see here's the fall of consciousness. This is a golden age, the age of Cancer. We're starting to go into the fall of consciousness, and then we're rising back up. So right now we are at the position that we are starting to rise back into higher consciousness, going into the next golden age. And so all of you, the topic that this PowerPoint page came from is from a teaching that I was doing about being divinely funded in our soul missions. And so you doing your soul mission, whatever you feel that is, and you just being connected to your soul enough that you can feel into like, what am I really here for? How can I really serve the consciousness awakening? This is a massively important thing, but it's also something that like you're probably going to be led into automatically, like you won't be able to avoid it, but there is still hard decisions that have to be made to put you onto that path and that trajectory, because we are still under this influence of being in the darkest stage of time. there's a lot of convenience is the word that's used that really messes us up. It's more convenient to have a job that pays you more than it is to do what you feel like you are naturally inclined to do here on earth, or to do what brings you joy, or to do what my point is that there's going to be temptations to stay comfortable and to be more convenient and to be safer, in quotes, because we're still under the influence of this very, very dark energy here. And when we move into the age of Aquarius, if you just think about what's the energy of all of these time periods? For example, Cancer is literally water energy, right? It makes sense there would be a flood during this time. Leo is like the courageous lion, the sun shining super strong, that beautiful divine masculine energy just beaming, right? When we go into Gemini down here, Gemini is like talk a lot, right? There's a lot of communication. There's communication between different tribes and different cultures, creating trade, bringing civilization back together. The age of Taurus, where there is community built, where there's a grounded stability. Hathor is the sacred cow, right? I actually have her back here. Have her image, I mean. And so this is where people were really starting to stabilize in their community instead of being more nomadic. The age of Aries is fire. It's war energy. Or the warrior energy is what I would say, right? And so, but because it's not that Aries or Pisces is bad, because this brought in more of the Dark Age, it's because the Kali Yuga is layered on top of these. So the Kali Yuga influences it in the worst way, right? So Aries in their highest capacity is utilizing their fire for good, is utilizing that warrior capacity to fight for the things that they really care about and to make a beautiful difference on the earth, right? To protect others. But an Aries that is in their disempowered state is desiring ownership over others. It's that war energy, it's conquest energy. So that's what we're seeing here. Pisces, super deep in spirituality, right? But with the dark energy on top of it. During this time period, religion was removed unless it was a monotheistic religion that honored a male god. During all these other times, well, I'll say in the age of Taurus and likely in the age of Gemini, the goddess was worshipped. And in the age of Gemini, Cancer, Leo, it would have been more so just like seeing the earth and honoring the natural cycles of the earth without like a label for that, there wouldn't be like a religion created around it. It would have just been honoring the natural cycle of earth, honoring the sun, honoring the elements, that sort of thing. Moving into the age of Taurus, seeing that coming from the birth of a woman, seeing woman birthing life. Whoa, how did that happen, right? This is so beautiful. This is a miracle, starting to honor the goddess. But in the age of Aries, this is when that starts to go away. You see in the Bible, the story of Moses getting angry at his brother for leading their people and honoring the sacred cow, the harlot of Babylon, right? That's Hathor. They were talking about them worshiping a goddess and worshiping the feminine. And so in the age of Aries, this starts to be removed. And priestesses, you may have memories of this. I created a whole course around this called The Priestess Returns, about the fall of the priestesses during this time period. The goddess temples were destroyed. The goddess temples were burned. And you can even see this in the last few hundred years. This would have been in the age of Pisces, though, with witch trials, women and men honoring the feminine were killed, were executed, were called heretics because they didn't believe in the church. And this started happening, in 1100. You can see like more in the 1300s or 1200s. You can see, what's it called? I'm blanking on the name of it. The Crusades. You see all the Knights of Templar who honored the feminine, who were protecting the sacred feminine. You see them all being executed. You see the Cathars, all who honored the sacred feminine, all being brutally murdered, calling themselves, being labeled as heretics, but really they just didn't align with the one male god. They decided, I'm not going to forsake the goddess. There's a mother and a father, and we can honor both, right? And so there's so much layered in each of these energies. And so the age of Pisces, what I was saying before, Pisces is deep. Pisces is the deep waters of like the psychological mind, but also like the spirituality. But with that dark energy applied to it, it's the removal of that. You must believe what we believe, or you will not be, we will kill you. That's literally the energy of the church. And a lot of people might be offended by that. But if you actually look at what happened and you do research about the early, 300 to 1000 AD, really 300 to 1900, actually more likely, you will be astonished. You will be astonished and disgusted, by the way. It's really hard to read and to look at and to study that material. I created Return to Goddess so that you guys wouldn't have to read 500 books about it like I did to get different perspectives. And I put it all in a nice, pretty presentation for you. That's a 2-hour presentation, and you're going to learn so much about it. I'm not saying it's easy to watch, but it's information that we need to know. And that's the sort of stuff that should have been in our history books. But because the colonizers wrote our history books, of course, that's not going to be talked about. They're going to be deemed in a better light, right? So now we're moving into this age of Aquarius, the age of innovation, of technology, of thinking outside the box, of new ideas coming in, of illuminated ideas and enlightenment, right? We're moving up into this higher, we're activating higher consciousness. So I feel that by the end of the age of Aquarius, all humans will be awakened at that point. And a lot of the horrible things that we're dealing with right now won't be in existence any longer. Consciousness will rise all the way up to the next series of golden ages. But all this time period, I would say from Capricorn up, it's going to be a much higher frequency where we are building, these systems. When we talk about new earth, we're talking about these systems that are based in love for humanity, for all living beings, for nature, for the waters, for the land, for the animals, all these sorts of things, which we've completely lost. right? And there are some of us like you probably watching this who do care about that, who are like, you know what, I'm going to buy cruelty-free shampoo and I'm going to pay attention. You know what, I'm not going to throw away my Tupperware. This little things like this get on my nerves. Like they just, because people sometimes don't have an awareness of like, oh, that Tupperware is going to sit in a landfill for 5 years, even though I could continue to use it. Or, and that's, I'm not inviting you to like become a hoarder, but all I'm trying to say is the energy around understanding implications on all other living beings. That is going to be a norm. That's going to be a norm. But for the next 2000 years, society is going to be waking up. And we are starting to see this happening. We've been seeing this really happening since 2012. Some people say that's when the age of Aquarius started. And you guys all have heard of, the Mayan prophecy that 2012, like December 21st, 2012 was going to be the last day on Earth. They meant that was going to be the last age, the last day of that age. So some people do also think that, but also that period from 2012 on, there has been a heightened sense of awakening. Just think about even like the amount of yoga studios that have opened up, the amount of vegan food sources that have like brands and companies that have come out. What's happened in terms of like cruelty-free items since 2012, all that stuff has exploded, right? And that's going to continue to happen and getting larger and larger and larger, especially as you watching this really step into your soul mission. And your soul mission doesn't need to look a certain way. It's you being your absolute self. It's you honoring your natural blueprint of who you are and doing the work to take off all the masks, doing the work to really just disconnect from, the generational trauma, from looking at how you act out from a wounded space, doing this deep alchemical work. This is what I specialize in. This is what I help my clients. And I do mostly one-on-one work with people. I work in the Akashic Records to help you identify some of these ways that you are acting from old coding, from like what I'm trying to say is like there's a lot of DNA activation a lot of times in the work that I'm doing with people, depending on where you're at and what you're available for and what you're open to. But when we can really start to step into our soul blueprint and radiate that out with other people, this is where the major work happens. This is where the change happens. So if you need any support, I do one-on-one Akashic record readings. You can get packages of 3 that saves you a little bit of money that you can use for a whole year. I do one-on-one mentorship. That's where I call these the initiations. This is where the real shifts and changes happen. I do from 2 months to 9-month experiences with me one-on-one. I do group masterminds. That only happens once a year. I do Akashic record trainings. And then I also just offer this sort of thing. I have a book. You can see it. Well, actually, I have it here because I did a podcast about this earlier. Oops, this is the draft version, but this is my book called Sacred Wealth. It's a workbook that helps take you through the energy of abundance. And what you feel called to, what you're desiring, please just live your life following that. Not like, oh, I really want to have a yacht. Like, what is your soul desire, right? So this started for me with like, I really desire to have more time freedom. I don't want to sit at a desk. I want to have more freedom. And I followed those breadcrumbs for 10 years and it led me into a space of having complete time freedom, right? Now I'm working on some different things. Now I'm working on other stuff, but as you follow the breadcrumbs of your soul desires, not your material desires, your soul desires, there is a difference. That's going to lead you into the work that is going to create the new earth, right? No matter if that's in a small way, which nothing is really small, or in a large way, which, who's to judge what's small or large? We're all planting seeds all the time. So anyway, that is the astrological ages of time. Please let me know what you thought about this, what came up for you. If you want to add anything that you think I forgot or just didn't mention, please share whatever in the comments. Other people do read the comments, and I love reading them. I love reading your reflections. And if you want to work with me in any capacity, you can go to my website, aliwilkins.com, explore all the things I have there. I have lots of free masterclasses. I have courses. I have sadhanas you can do. You can hire me to work with you as a mentor, or hire me to work with you in the Akashic Records. Like, all this stuff is super potent and so helpful and supportive in taking us into this new earth. And we all get to show up for that, right? So do whatever you need to do to be able to do that. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave your comments and share what came up for you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe if you want to watch more videos from me. I do videos every Monday-ish. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.